Have you ever wondered what happens when an exorcism fails? When the prayers are whispered, the holy water runs dry, and yet something stays. In forgotten churches and dimly lit houses around the world, there are places where the ritual didn't bring peace-only silence, a silence that watches. Rooms where furniture still shakes at night, where whispers come from behind locked doors, and shadows stretch too far across the walls. These are not scenes from a movie. They are real, documented, witnessed, and in some cases, never fully explained. From hidden villages in Eastern Europe to quiet suburbs in America, these places are more than haunted. They're scarred by confrontations with something most people pray never to meet. Because when evil refuses to leave, it waits. Number 1. St. Francis Xavier Church, Erling, Iowa, USA. In the quiet farming town of Erling, Iowa, sits St. Francis Xavier Church, a humble brick building that once became the epicenter of a spiritual battle so violent it left a permanent scar on American religious history. In 1928, a woman known under the alias Anna Eklund arrived at the convent beside the church, escorted by priests, her family, and a heavy air of fear. For years, Anna had shown disturbing signs: an aversion to holy objects, speaking languages she had never learned, her body contorting in ways doctors couldn't explain. She screamed blasphemies in guttural voices. She hissed at the sight of crucifixes, and when she was restrained, she began to levitate. Over the course of 23 days, the nuns and priests fought to drive out what they believed were multiple demons inside her. They said she vomited pins and nails. Her eyes rolled back, her face twisted into grotesque expressions, and the voice that emerged from her throat was not her own. Witnesses claimed the walls trembled when she screamed. Father Theophilus Risinger, a Capuchin monk brought in from Wisconsin, led the exorcism. He reported feeling unseen forces pushing back, laughing at him, mocking his prayers. On more than one occasion, Anna broke free from her bindings, launching herself with unnatural strength at those around her. The ordeal left everyone involved changed. The priests aged, the nuns rarely spoke of it again. But those who visit the church today swear something still lingers. The air grows cold in certain corners. Candles flicker without wind. One visitor claimed to feel an overwhelming pressure on his chest while standing alone at the altar, as if something invisible was watching and remembering. The church has been renovated, modernized, repainted, but time does little to erase trauma. Beneath the choir loft, beneath the soft glow of stained glass windows, the memory of Anna's torment hums like a faint echo. Some believe the spirits expelled that winter never truly left, that they simply returned to the dark, waiting for the next invitation. In Erling, they say, faith was tested and something answered, something that still knows its way home. Number 2. The Borley Rectory, Essex, England. Once called the most haunted house in England, Borley Rectory was never just a home, it was a magnet for the unexplainable. Built in 1862 on the ruins of an old monastery in the sleepy village of Borley, Essex, the rectory quickly became infamous. Strange noises echoed through its halls, footsteps on empty staircases, whispering voices behind locked doors, and bells that rang on their own. The first inhabitants tried to brush it off. But soon, even the skeptical began to believe that something had taken hold of the house and wasn't letting go. The most chilling legend spoke of a sorrowful nun and a forbidden love affair. Locals claimed she had been bricked into the monastery walls as punishment, and her restless spirit was first seen gliding silently across the garden path. Others witnessed a headless horseman riding through the property. Objects moved on their own. Writing appeared on the walls. The rectory began to feel less like a home and more like a trap. In the 1920s, famed paranormal investigator Harry Price arrived to document the phenomena. What he found only deepened the mystery. Seances revealed violent spirits, and at least one exorcism was attempted, though Price claimed it provoked the house rather than calmed it. Psychic mediums described an overwhelming presence of suffering and malevolence. One even refused to enter certain rooms, saying the evil was too dense to breathe. Then in 1939, fire swallowed the rectory whole. The cause remains murkysome. Say it was an accident. Others whisper of darker motives. But even in ruins, the land remains unsettled. People who visit the site report sudden nausea, camera malfunctions, and the eerie sensation of being watched. Dogs refuse to walk past the perimeter. At night, neighbors still hear faint whispers drifting through the trees. Nothing was ever rebuilt on the site. It stands bare open to sky and shadow, and yet many say it still holds the energy of everything that happened within its walls, the tragedies, the exorcisms, the unspoken things that couldn't be driven out. Borley Rectory may be gone, but something underneath still stirs, as if waiting for someone to knock, or listen, or believe. Number 3. Tanacu Monastery, Romania. In the remote hills of eastern Romania stands the shell of Tanacu Monastery, its crumbling walls and silent courtyard hiding a tragedy too recent to fade into legend. In 2005, the monastery became the site of an exorcism so brutal, so horrifying, it shocked the world and forever stained the church that carried it out. Mariska Irina Cornici was a 23-year-old novice nun who had come to Tanaku in search of peace. But within weeks, her behavior began to change. She claimed to hear voices. She stopped eating. She accused others of being possessed. Some say she was suffering from untreated schizophrenia. Others believed she had been taken by something darker. Father Daniel Petru Corogianu, the monastery's priest and former monk, was convinced she needed an exorcism. But what followed was not a solemn ritate, was a ritual drenched in cruelty. Irina was bound to a wooden cross, gagged, and kept without food or water for days. She was left in a cold, candlelit room while chants echoed around her, echoing through the monastery like battle cries. Her screams were heard by the other nuns. Some joined in the prayers. Others stayed silent. When Irina died, her frail body unable to endure the torment, the church called it a tragic accident. The Romanian Orthodox Church called it a disgrace, and the media called it murder. Father Corogianu and several nuns were convicted and imprisoned, but no sentence could erase what had happened behind those stone walls. Locals say the monastery was never the same. The building was abandoned, left to rot under the weight of what took place inside, and yet people still go there drawn by a strange pull, only to leave shaken and pale. Visitors speak of cold gusts that come from nowhere, of crying that rises from empty rooms, of whispers that plead not to be left alone. Even the wind seems to hush when it passes the monastery now. Some believe Irina's soul remains trapped there, too traumatized to move on, her spirit a warning of what can happen when fear is mistaken for faith. At Tanaku, the exorcism didn't cast anything out. It only invited something in and left it there, grieving in the dark. Number 4. The Smur House, West Pittston, Pennsylvania, USA. On a quiet street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, sits an unremarkable duplex that once became a war zone between the living and the damned. For the Smur family, their home was supposed to be a new beginning. But what they found instead was something relentless in unseen force that turned every wall into a warning and every shadow into a threat. It started subtly, knocking on walls, foul smells with no source, appliances turning on by themselves, but soon the darkness revealed its full shape. Furniture levitated. Claw marks appeared on mirrors. The family dog was hurled across the room by an invisible hand. Janet Smurl, the mother, claimed she was physically assaulted by something she couldn't see, only feel. The entity didn't just torment it, fed off fear, growing stronger the longer it stayed. Terrified and desperate, the Smurls reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, the renowned demonologists known for their investigations into Amityville and Annabelle. The Warrens declared the home possessed by a demonic presence. They performed multiple blessings and attempted exorcisms, but the entity refused to leave. In fact, the activity reportedly intensified, mocking prayers, slamming doors, and appearing as shadowy forms just beyond the edges of vision. Neighbors began to notice too. One heard screams from within the walls when no one was home. Another saw lights flickering through closed curtains like a storm inside the house. Yet nothing could drive the entity away, not holy water, not prayers, not even the church's official involvement. Every time it seemed to quiet, it returned stronger, more spiteful. Eventually, the Smurls moved. But the next residents also reported disturbances, though less frequent, as if the house had grown tired, but not empty. To this day, those who pass by say the air around it feels heavier, like the house itself is holding its breath. Paranormal investigators still visit, some leaving convinced the evil merely sleeps there, waiting for the right conditions, the right family to wake it again. The Smur House doesn't look like a place of horror. That's part of what makes it worse. Evil doesn't always need crumbling castles or stormy nights. Sometimes it lives in plain sight and refuses to leave quietly. Number 5. Hayrick House, Atchison, Kansas, USA. In the small, windswept town of Atchison, Kansas, stands a fading Victorian home known to locals as the Hayrick House. With its chipped paint and weather-beaten porch, it looks like any other century-old building until you step inside. Then the silence starts to feel unnatural. Then the house begins to watch. In the early 1980s, a young girl living there began to change. She spoke in voices not her own, low, snarling tones that mocked her family and cursed their faith. At night, she would scream in languages no one recognized. Her eyes, they said, would turn dark, her skin blistering at the touch of holy water. Family members claimed to see her levitate, furniture crashing around her in chaotic fits of violence. One priest later described the air inside the home as so thick with something evil it was hard to breathe. The family, desperate and running out of options, called in local clergy. What followed was not a single night of ritual, but a drawn-out series of attempted exorcisms, each more terrifying than the last. The child's strength was unnatural. She spoke of things she couldn't possibly know. Walls cracked without warning. Bibles were torn apart. And during one of the rituals, a crucifix on the wall reportedly snapped in half on its own. When the final exorcism was attempted, something changed. A sudden, piercing scream that witnesses said felt like it came from beneath the house itself. Then silence, then stillness. The girl collapsed, unconscious, and though she would eventually recover, those who were present say they were never quite the same. The house remained standing, but it was never quiet again. Tenants came and went, complaining of voices in the night, of lights that wouldn't stay off, of cold spots that seemed to follow them from room to room. Paranormal teams recorded unexplained EVP slow growls and distorted laughter captured on tape. One psychic refused to even enter, warning that the house held something that wanted back in. Today, the Hayrick House still sits quietly on its street, its windows reflecting only darkness. The girl survived, the house endured. But the question lingers like smoke in the rafters. What if it wasn't fully gone? Number 6. San Sebastian Church, Manila, Philippines. Rising above the chaos of Manila's streets, San Sebastian Church stands like a fortress of faith, its towering spires piercing the humid sky, its iron frame echoing the prayers of generations. Built in the late 19th century, the church is a marvel of neo-Gothic design, the only all-steel structure of its kind in Asia. But behind its beauty lies a darker truth. San Sebastian is not only a house of worship, but also a battleground for unseen forces that have plagued it for over a century. Whispers of hauntings began not long after its completion in 1891. Parishioners reported strange figures lurking behind the columns during Mass, their faces hidden but unmistakably watching. Choir members swore they heard additional voices joining in hymns, deep, guttural tones that didn't belong to anyone in the room. But it wasn't until the early 20th century that the church's secret came to light. Behind closed doors, exorcisms had been taking place, and not just one, multiple. Priests claimed the spirits tormenting the church weren't ordinary hauntings. They were ancient, pre-colonial entities that had fused with the land long before Christianity arrived. Each exorcism was met with violent resistance. Crucifixes fell from walls, candles flared without flame, statues wept, not blood, but thick, blackened water. One exorcist later said, "The evil here isn't loud, it waits, it studies." Even now, some priests refuse to walk the church alone at night. They speak of a heavy presence in the sacristy, of confession booths that slam shut without cause, of shadows that seem to move just slightly too slowly as if unwilling to vanish completely. During late-night masses, the congregation sometimes reports flickering lights and the unmistakable feeling of being touched when no one is near. Attempts to bless the entire church have reportedly been met with failure. The rites stop short, the air grows heavy, the silence becomes oppressive. Though the church remains active and loved, it carries its burden quietly, a place where faith collides with something older and deeper than doctrine. In San Sebastian, the prayers never truly end because neither does the presence. And some nights, the shadows don't just dance, they linger. Number 7. The Robbie Mannheim case, Maryland, USA. Long before The Exorcist terrified moviegoers around the world, a quiet home in Maryland became the cradle of something far more chilling and real. In 1949, a 14-year-old boy known under the pseudonym Robbie Mannheim began to experience phenomena no one could explain. It started with scratching sounds in the walls, barely audible at first, then growing louder, more violent, as if something were trying to claw its way in. Religious objects began to fly off the shelves. Furniture slid across the floor with no one touching it, and on Robbie's skin, deep welts appeared, some forming words, others strange symbols that bled without breaking the skin. Anneliese was just 16 when the first signs appeared: blackouts, strange visions, voices whispering to her in the night. Diagnosed with epilepsy and treated for psychiatric illness, her condition only worsened. By her early 20s, she and her devout Catholic family had become convinced the cause wasn't medical, it was demonic. Over the course of nearly a year, 2 priests performed a staggering 67 exorcisms on her, some lasting for hours, others all night. Recordings captured her growling in inhuman voices, reciting scripture backwards, speaking of hell as if she had seen it. By the end, she was frail, bruised, and barely able to speak. Her last words to her mother were chilling: "Beg for absolution." In 1976, Anneliese died of malnutrition and dehydration. She was just 23. The priests were charged with negligent homicide, and the case became a media firestorm, eventually inspiring the film The Exorcism of Emily Rose. But no courtroom could explain the sounds caught on tape. No medical theory could explain how she knew things she'd never learned. And no one, not even the guilty Eva, fully recanted their belief that something beyond this world had taken hold of her. Today, the Michel home remains empty. Locals speak of strange noises at night, footsteps pacing slowly upstairs, whispers echoing through the yard. Some say they've seen a pale figure kneeling in the upper window, hands folded in silent prayer. One passerby claimed to hear muffled weeping through the walls, though the house has long been sealed shut. Anneliese is buried nearby, her grave often adorned with candles and rosaries. But the house where she suffered feels untouched by time, like a wound that never healed. Those who stand outside say it doesn't feel empty, it feels watched. Number 10. The Heptaran House, Quebec, Canada. Hidden deep in the forests of Quebec, surrounded by whispering pines and an uneasy stillness, stands an old, weather-worn house known only by locals as the Heptaran House. The name isn't on any map. It comes from an ancient grimoire, the Heptamarona medieval book of angelic and demonic rituals said to summon forces beyond comprehension. And according to the few who know its story, this house was built not just to shelter a family, but to contain something far older. In the early 1900s, the family who moved in began experiencing strange occurrences almost immediately. Books fell from shelves. Symbols etched themselves into fogged mirrors. Children spoke to someone. No one could see someone. They called the man in the floor. As the years passed, the hauntings grew more violent. One child was found sleepwalking in the snow, barefoot and unblinking. Objects burned without fire. Rooms turned ice-cold for hours, then suddenly unbearably hot. In the 1970s, a local priest was called in after the youngest daughter began speaking in multiple voices, quoting passages from the Heptamarona book no one in the family claimed to own. The exorcism was conducted in secret, with only the priest, the parents, and a trusted family friend present. But something went terribly wrong. Halfway through the rite, the girl screamed a sound described as not human. The priest reportedly dropped his crucifix, staggered out the front door, and fled into the woods. He never returned, and never spoke of that night again, not even to the church. The girl survived, but changed, silent for months, her eyes always fixed on corners. Her drawings, found later, were filled with symbols matching those found in the original Heptameron. The house was quickly abandoned, left to rot beneath the snow and moss. Locals now avoid the trail that leads to it. Hikers who've stumbled upon it report overwhelming nausea, nosebleeds, and the unmistakable sensation of being pulled back when trying to leave. No one lives there now. No one dares to. The windows are cracked, the door chained shut, but the air around it feels thick like it's holding a breath. And those who get too close say they hear something whispering, not in French, not in English, but in a language the house remembers, and the forest hasn't yet forgotten. Some doors should never be opened. Some places bear scars you can't see etched not into stone, but into silence, memory, and air that never quite warms. These homes, churches, and forgotten corners of the world weren't just visited by darkness, they were changed by it. Whether you believe in possession, or simply in the power of belief itself, the fear lingers for those who lived it, and for those who dare to listen. Trauma doesn't always end with a ritual. Sometimes it stays, waiting, watching. These are not just haunted locations. They are reminders that the unknown doesn't knock, it slips in through the cracks. So if you ever find yourself near one of these places, drawn by curiosity or thrill, remember this. It's not always what you see that follows you home. Sometimes it's what you awaken. And if you go, don't stay after dark.